Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us here on CBS News 24/7. I'm Lindsay Reiser. We begin this hour in Washington, D.C. CBS News has new reporting that dozens of Democratic lawmakers could issue statements calling for President Biden to step down from the presidential race over the next 48 hours. So far, 18 House Democrats and 1 Senate Democrat have called for the president to withdraw his bid for re-election. It's creating division within the party.
Ask yourself that question. Are you sure? Because you're not just gambling your own political reputation. You are gambling the future of the United States of America.
But even if you think that he's a few points down, that doesn't mean that the race is not winnable. Ultimately, the race is going to come down not just to who's the best talker, but who do people trust on the economy.
I've been asking him to do more town hall style meetings because I think that he performs well when he interacts with people. And I think people feel better about him when they're allowed to interact with him.
CBS News congressional correspondent Scott MacFarlane is following all of this for us. So, Scott, the president really working the phones today and this weekend. He's speaking with the Congressional Hispanic Caucus soon. What do we know about this larger effort to gain support?
And he'll be speaking with other groups through the weekend. I've just learned that he'll be speaking with the New Democrats Coalition, a group of more moderate or national security-focused Democrats, tomorrow at 4 p.m. Washington, D.C. time. He'll also have calls, we expect, with other caucuses and working groups inside the House Democratic Caucus as he tries to stop the bleeding, because the bleeding has continued of his support even after that news conference. There were multiple calls for him to withdraw in the hours after the event last night. And then early this afternoon, yet another name added to the list, Mike Levin of California, one of those frontline Democrats in a particularly competitive race, urged the president to withdraw or pass the torch. The names keep getting added to the list in the U.S. House. We keep seeing statements like that one from Congressman Levin. The president's going to work the phones and try to stop the growing calls for him to stand down. But that notwithstanding, Lindsay, there's been no indication here on this Friday in Washington these calls are having an impact on the president's desire to stay in the race.
So what do we know about the CBS News reporting, potentially forthcoming statements from Democrats? Would a large number change that?
Well, a large number provides a little more leverage. It's just not clear it's going to be sufficient leverage. We were struck by a couple things today, Lindsay. First of all, the statement from the House leader, Hakeem Jeffries, who announced publicly and to his members he had a meeting last night with the president. Didn't say whether he has the president's back or whether he tried to get the president to stand down, just that he had a meeting and expressed the very diverse sets of opinions inside the House Democratic Caucus. There are many members of the House Democrats who say the president should stay in this and win. The largest group is the undeclared, undecided group. But what's clear is that that singular news conference Thursday night didn't win everybody or necessarily anybody back. Take a listen to this interview I had just before the news conference with Adam Smith of Washington State, one of the first to say the president should stand down.
You think a single press conference can change things?
Heavens, no. No, I just said that. I said to her a moment ago that, look, I mean, the mere fact that we're sitting here having a conversation about whether or not our candidate for president can get through a press conference on NATO, by the way, on what is a policy that he has been absolutely right on and done a great job on. And we're having to talk about, hope he gets through it. That's not what you want out of your nominee.
Lindsay, with our House sources today and our Senate sources, there's one kind of unifying thread. This is not sustainable. There's going to have to be some form of unity that is created, if not in the coming weeks, they would hope or aspire in the coming days.
So that said, we have in the House, I believe it's now 18. We got 213 members. What about the scores of congressional Democrats and the senators, the 49, total senators, many of them Democrat, that are standing by the president or staying neutral? Are their voices not as loud in and around Washington?
I'm most focused on the staying neutral group because they're the largest group and because they have preserved the capacity to do something synchronized, to try to nudge this one way or the other. Keeping their powder dry, they still have that capacity. It's especially true in the Senate, where only one Democrat has publicly called for the president to withdraw. Others have danced around it. Some have openly expressed skepticism about his ability to win, but they haven't made a declaration. That's where the variable is right now, Lindsay. They still have the force and might in numbers to try to do something if they choose to.
We know last night most of the questions from reporters had to do around this topic. This is what the president said about Vice President Harris.
I wouldn't have picked her unless I thought she was qualified to be president. From the very beginning, I made no bones about that. She is qualified to be president.
Where do conversations stand in regards to the VP?
Less ambiguity there. Everybody who asks about the alternative is expressing optimism or bullishness about Kamala Harris. That includes Jim Clyburn, that ardent Trump loyalist, a lion of the U.S. House who this morning on TV says he's still riding with Biden, but says he would absolutely be behind the vice president if for somehow the president withdrew. There's a lot of entropy, a lot of chaos politically as we begin this weekend.
Scott MacFarlane, thank you.